Hello, my name is Emily Grace, and I never expected to die at the age of 23. I was young, full of dreams, and excited about the future. Life felt like it was just beginning, but everything changed in an instant. What happened after I died is something I never imagined, and today, I want to share my story with you. This is the account of how I met Jesus and saw what God has prepared for us in heaven. It was an ordinary Friday evening, one of those days that starts off completely unremarkable. I had spent most of it running errands, texting my friends to finalize plans, and daydreaming about the weekend ahead. Life was simple but good. I was 23, full of dreams, and filled with excitement about everything that lay ahead. That evening, I was on my way to meet some friends for dinner at a new restaurant we'd been talking about for weeks. I remember feeling a small thrill of excitement, the kind you get when you're about to have a fun night out. My favorite playlist was blasting in the car, and I was singing along, probably a little off-key but not caring at all. The roads were busy, as usual for a Friday evening, but I wasn't in a hurry. I had left early enough to beat the rush and was feeling pretty good about being ahead of schedule for once. As I waited at a red light, I remember glancing out the window and noticing a young couple walking hand in hand on the sidewalk. They were laughing about something, and for some reason, it stuck with me. It was such a simple, happy moment, and it made me smile. When the light turned green, I eased my car forward, merging onto a main road. Traffic had thinned out a bit, and I was cruising along, just a few minutes from my destination. That's when it happened. It was like time slowed down, but everything happened so fast at the same time. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw a truck barreling toward the intersection. It was coming from my left, and I instinctively knew it wasn't going to stop. In that split second, I gripped the steering wheel tightly, my heart pounding. I barely had time to react. The truck slammed into the side of my car with a force I can't even describe. The sound was deafening, metal crunching, glass shattering, the impact echoing in my ears. My body was thrown violently against the seatbelt, and for a brief moment, there was nothing but pain, confusion, and chaos. And then, silence. Everything went dark. It was as if someone had turned off a switch. I wasn't in pain anymore. I wasn't scared. I wasn't even in my car. I was somewhere else. At first, I didn't understand what was happening. I tried to make sense of where I was, but nothing felt real. Slowly, I realized I was floating, weightless and free. I wasn't tied to my body or the wreckage of the car anymore. Looking down, I saw the scene below me as if I were watching it from above. My mangled car was in the middle of the intersection, surrounded by other vehicles that had screeched to a halt. People were running toward it, some with their hands covering their mouths in shock. I could see the paramedics arriving, their flashing lights cutting through the dimming evening light. It felt surreal to watch them work frantically, pulling me, my body, out of the car. I knew it was me down there, but I didn't feel any connection to that lifeless form. I wasn't scared or panicking. In fact, I felt strangely calm, as if I was being gently cradled by an invisible presence. The scene below began to fade, and I felt a soft tug, almost like I was being pulled upward by a gentle but irresistible force. That's when I noticed the light. It wasn't like any light I'd ever seen before. It wasn't harsh or blinding, but warm, inviting, and somehow alive. It seemed to surround me, pulling me closer, filling me with a sense of peace and love so deep that I couldn't begin to describe it. In that moment, I realized something that should have been terrifying. I was dead. But instead of fear, all I felt was acceptance. I knew this was just the beginning of something far greater than the life I had left behind. As I moved closer to the light, the sense of peace and love grew stronger. It was unlike anything I'd ever felt on Earth. Every worry, every fear, every ounce of pain and doubt I'd ever carried in my life was gone. It was as though the very essence of who I was had been stripped down to something pure and weightless. I felt whole, complete, and more alive than I ever had been, which was ironic considering I knew I had died. The light seemed to surround me, and as I drew nearer, I began to notice that it wasn't just light. It had a presence. It was warm, not in a physical sense, but in a way that made me feel safe and cherished, like the light itself knew me intimately. And then, within the light, I saw him. He wasn't just a figure, but a presence that radiated love and authority at the same time. It was Jesus. I didn't need to be told it was him, I just knew. There was no doubt, no hesitation in my heart. He stood there, looking at me with eyes that seemed to hold the entire universe within them. They were filled with such kindness, such understanding, that I felt completely exposed and completely loved at the same time. His face was radiant, glowing with an inner light, and his expression was one of profound love and joy. He didn't look at me with pity or judgment, but with the kind of love that can only come from someone who truly knows you, every flaw, every mistake, every fear, and still embraces you fully. "Emily," he said, his voice soft yet powerful, resonating not just in my ears, but in every part of me. "Welcome home." The sound of his voice was unlike anything I had ever experienced. It wasn't just heard, it was felt. It moved through me like a wave of peace and assurance, calming every last fragment of doubt I might have had. In that moment, I felt more seen, more loved, and more valued than I ever thought was possible. I wanted to speak, but words wouldn't come. It was as if my thoughts themselves were enough to communicate. He knew everything I was feeling, everything I wanted to ask, without me saying a word. I managed to think, "Am I really dead?" His smile widened, and there was a twinkle in his eyes. "Your body is resting, but your soul is here with me," he said. "You are safe." I felt an overwhelming sense of relief wash over me. There was no fear, no regret, only a deep sense of being exactly where I was supposed to be. He reached out his hand to me, and without hesitation, I took it. The moment our hands touched, I felt a surge of warmth and energy unlike anything I'd ever known. It wasn't just physical, it was spiritual. It was as though his touch filled me with a deep understanding of who he was and how much he loved me. As we stood there in the light, I began to notice more around me. The light wasn't just a glow, it was alive. It seemed to pulse gently, almost like it was breathing, and within it, I could sense countless other presences. Angels, I realized. They weren't visible yet, but I could feel them, their joy and love radiating all around us like a heavenly symphony. Jesus gestured to me, and without speaking, I knew he wanted to show me something. As we began to move, I felt no fear or hesitation, only a sense of awe and wonder. The light around us seemed to shift and change, and suddenly, I was no longer in a void of brilliance. I was somewhere else entirely. The ground beneath us was soft and shimmering, like a pathway made of light itself. The air was unlike anything I'd ever breathed. It felt alive, filled with an energy that seemed to pour into my very being. I looked around and saw that the light extended endlessly in every direction, and yet it didn't feel vast or empty. It felt intimate, personal, like every part of it was connected to me. As we walked, Jesus spoke again. "You are loved more than you can ever comprehend," he said. "You always have been. You were made for this moment, for this place. This is your true home." His words struck something deep within me, and I felt tears streaming down my face. Not tears of sadness, but of joy, of overwhelming gratitude. Every insecurity I had ever felt, every doubt I had about my worth, melted away in the light of his love. "Why me?" I asked, finally finding my voice. "Why would you care so much about me?" Jesus stopped and turned to face me, his expression soft and full of compassion. "Because you are my child," he said. "You were created with purpose, with love, and with a destiny. You are precious to me, as is every soul I have created." The way he said it made me feel like I was the only person in existence, and yet I also knew that this same love extended to everyone. It was infinite, unending, and so far beyond what I could understand. We continued walking, and with every step, I felt as though I was shedding parts of myself, fears, doubts, pain, that I didn't even realize I had been carrying. Jesus held my hand firmly, guiding me with a gentle but unwavering assurance. I didn't know where we were going, but it didn't matter. As long as he was with me, I knew I was safe. "Emily," he said after a moment, his voice soft yet filled with purpose. "There is something I want to show you." I felt a thrill of anticipation in my heart, as though I was about to witness something extraordinary. And as we continued forward, I could feel the light around us beginning to change, shifting into something even more wondrous than before. As we walked through the shimmering path, the world around me seemed to unfold in ways I couldn't even begin to describe. The ground beneath my feet was soft, almost like walking on clouds, yet it had a solid, stable feel to it. It sparkled as if every step I took left a trace of stardust behind. The air was filled with a sweet fragrance, like the scent of flowers blooming on a warm spring morning, but it was more than just a smell. It seemed to fill every part of me, uplifting me from the inside out. I noticed the colors around me were more vibrant than anything I had ever seen on Earth. The trees, which I had only caught glimpses of, were glowing, their leaves shimmering in colors I could barely comprehend. Golden oranges, rich purples, deep blues, like the trees were made of light itself. The sky above was vast, a canvas of soft, swirling hues of pink, lavender, and deep, radiant gold, with no sun to be seen, but the light came from everywhere. There was no shadow, no darkness. The entire place was illuminated with a divine glow that made everything feel alive. The closer we walked, the more I began to see. There were fields of flowers, flowers unlike any I had ever known. They were huge, their petals gleaming with radiant colors that pulsed like a heartbeat. As we approached, I could hear them, almost as if they were singing, humming with a melody that was both peaceful and joyful. It was a sound I couldn't describe in words. It wasn't just music, it was a harmony, a chorus of voices in unison, emanating from the very earth beneath my feet. The flowers seemed to sway in rhythm, as if they were dancing to a song written by heaven itself. I was speechless. I tried to take it all in, my heart pounding with awe. Every step I took felt like stepping deeper into something sacred, something eternal. It wasn't just a place, it was an experience, a presence that wrapped around me, filling me with wonder and peace. The very air felt like it was made of love, soft and all-encompassing. Then, in the distance, I saw something more, an immense structure that rose from the ground, seemingly made of the light itself. It looked like a city, but not a city as I understood it on Earth. The buildings were vast and elegant, but they weren't solid in the way I expected. They shimmered like they were made of crystal or glass, catching the light in ways that made them appear to shift and change with every moment. As we got closer, I realized they were surrounded by gardens, beautiful, manicured gardens, but alive in ways I had never imagined. The flowers here seemed to reach for the sky, their petals glowing with every color of the rainbow. Jesus led me toward the structure, and as we approached, I could feel the atmosphere changing. It wasn't just the beauty that was overwhelming. It was the peace, the serenity, the presence of something so powerful and yet so kind, so warm, that I couldn't help but feel completely safe. I didn't know where I was or what to expect, but it didn't matter. The moment I stepped into this place, I felt like I had come home. The sense of peace I felt here was so profound, it was as if every part of me was being healed, restored, and filled with a sense of belonging. We passed through archways made of shimmering light, and I could hear the faintest murmur of voices in the distance. It wasn't the sound of crowds, it was more like a chorus of angels, or people singing in harmony. It was impossible to describe exactly, but the joy in the air was palpable. The sound was soothing, and it made my heart swell with something I could only describe as pure love. Jesus continued walking beside me, his presence radiating comfort. He didn't need to explain what I was seeing, but I could feel that he wanted me to understand the significance of it all. "This," he said, "is a glimpse of what is to come. This is the place prepared for all who are called home." He gestured around us, and I took it all in. The wide, open spaces, the grand structures, the gardens. But it wasn't just the buildings that held my attention. It was the people. As we passed through an open courtyard, I saw them. People. They were laughing, talking, and walking around. Some were sitting in groups, others were standing in quiet conversation. There was no anxiety, no rush, no worry. They were simply living, simply being. They glowed with an inner light, as if they had been filled with a peace and joy that couldn't possibly come from anything earthly. They didn't have the anxieties I carried with me every day, the worries about the future, the uncertainty about life. They were free. I saw one couple sitting by a fountain, their hands intertwined. The fountain itself was unlike any I had ever seen. It was made of clear, sparkling water, but the water didn't fall in the way it would on Earth. It seemed to rise, gently flowing upwards as if responding to an invisible current. It glowed, radiating a soft light that illuminated the faces of the people around it. As I watched them, I realized something incredible. They weren't just living in this place. They were in communion with it. They were part of it, and the joy they radiated wasn't just personal, it was shared. There was no separation between them and the world around them. They were connected to everything: the trees, the flowers, the people, the water. Everything in this place was part of a greater whole, and that unity was so tangible, so real, that it filled me with an overwhelming sense of peace. "Everything here," Jesus explained gently, as though reading my thoughts, "was created with love. Every tree, every flower, every person. It was all made by God's hand. And it is all connected. There is no suffering, no fear here, only peace." I looked around again, taking in the endless beauty, the harmony that surrounded me. This was heaven, and it was everything I had hoped for and so much more. It was real. It was alive. It was perfect. Jesus walked with me through this magnificent city, showing me more. A great temple with walls that shimmered like pearls, reflecting the light in 1,000 different ways. Inside, the air was thick with a sense of reverence. People knelt in worship, not out of fear, but out of love. They were not seeking approval, but offering their love in return. I could feel the presence of God in every corner of this place. "There is no need to fear here," Jesus said, his voice full of warmth. "This is a place of rest, of peace, of endless joy. But it is also a place where you will be forever with the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit." As we continued through this stunning world, I realized that this place was not just beautiful, it was alive with purpose. Everything had been created with intention. There was no waste, no aimlessness. Every person, every flower, every tree, every beam of light, it was all part of a grand design that spoke of love, of connection, of eternity. This was a place where everything belonged, and where peace reigned. I couldn't help but think of Earth, of the pain, the suffering, the confusion we all live with. But as I stood there, in that perfect world, I felt a deep, unshakable knowing. Heaven wasn't just a place to go after life. It was the place we were all meant to return to. It was home. And no matter what hardships we faced in life, heaven was waiting for us. It was already ours, and it was more beautiful than I could ever have imagined. As we continued to walk through the beautiful, shimmering world of heaven, I began to feel a sense of awe and fulfillment that seemed to deepen with every step. It was almost as if the very ground beneath me resonated with a truth I couldn't entirely grasp yet, something so profound, so complete, that I felt it in the core of my being. This place, this incredible world, wasn't just beautiful for its beauty. It was full of meaning, full of purpose. Every blade of grass, every sparkling light, every person I encountered seemed to be living out their eternal purpose, fulfilling the call they were created for. And it made me realize, as I walked beside Jesus, that my life on earth had been only a small part of something far greater. We came to a quiet, serene garden where the air was fragrant with the scent of unknown flowers, their petals soft and iridescent. There was a bench under an ancient-looking tree, with branches that seemed to stretch across the sky, its leaves shimmering like silver. Jesus gently motioned for me to sit with him. As I sat beside him, I felt an overwhelming sense of peace wash over me. This was a place of rest, of deep reflection, and I knew that Jesus had something important to share with me. He turned to face me, his eyes filled with warmth and understanding. "Emily, there is more for you to see, more for you to understand," he said softly. "But it's not just about this place. It's about the journey you've taken and the purpose that still awaits you." I looked at him, confused. I was surrounded by such beauty and peace, and I couldn't imagine why he would want me to leave. I wasn't ready to go back to Earth. There was nothing there for me anymore, or at least that's how it felt in that moment. But he smiled gently, as if he understood my thoughts. "I know you're not ready to leave, but you must understand that you're here for a reason. Everything you've seen, everything you're experiencing now, it's not just for your comfort. It's for a purpose, and that purpose will call you back to the world you came from." I looked at him, puzzled. "What do you mean? I don't understand. Everything here is so perfect. Why would I go back to a world that's filled with so much pain and struggle?" Jesus' expression softened, and he placed his hand gently on mine. "Because, Emily, you are not finished. Your life on earth had meaning, more meaning than you could have known. And you have a purpose, a calling, that you haven't yet fulfilled." His words struck me deeply. I felt a knot tighten in my chest, an aching realization that I had been living my life without fully understanding the depth of my potential, the depth of my calling. I had been so caught up in the small details, the distractions of everyday life, that I hadn't seen the larger picture. Now, sitting here in the presence of Jesus, in the very heart of heaven, I realized how much I had taken for granted, how much I had missed. "There is still work for you to do," he said, as if reading my thoughts. "And the purpose of your life isn't just to live for yourself. It's to share the love and the message of God's kingdom with others. Your journey is not over." I could feel the weight of his words, heavy with truth, but at the same time, I felt comforted by his presence. His words didn't feel like a command or a demand. They felt like an invitation to something greater, something more meaningful than anything I had experienced in my life on earth. "You've touched lives already, even if you didn't realize it," he continued. "Every kind word, every action born from love, every moment where you reached out to help someone, that was part of your purpose. And there is more yet to come. You have been given a gift, a glimpse of the eternal, and now you are meant to share that gift with the world." I felt a stirring in my heart as he spoke. It was as if something inside of me was awakening, something that had been dormant, waiting for the right moment to surface. But the truth he was sharing with me wasn't easy to accept. The world I had left behind was full of uncertainty, of pain, and at times, overwhelming darkness. I had spent years struggling with my own questions, doubts, and fears. And here, in this perfect place, it seemed impossible to imagine returning to the chaos of earth. But Jesus' gaze remained gentle and understanding. "I know it feels overwhelming," he said, as if reading my heart. "But you are not going alone. You will never be alone. The Holy Spirit will guide you, and my love will always be with you. And the work you are called to do isn't about you. It's about those who need to hear the truth, who need to know the love of God." Tears filled my eyes as I realized the magnitude of what he was saying. I had been so focused on myself, so caught up in my own fears and desires, that I had never truly seen the world around me. There were people who needed hope, who needed the love of God more than anything else. I had been so caught up in my own worries and doubts that I had missed the bigger picture. "You are my hands and feet on earth," Jesus said, his voice filled with compassion. "And the love you have received here, this love that has no end, no condition, it is meant to be shared. It is not just for you, it is for the world." I sat quietly for a moment, absorbing his words, feeling the weight of his calling settle deep within me. I could feel my heart expanding, not with fear or anxiety, but with a strange sense of purpose that I hadn't understood before. I had been so focused on my own life, my own future, that I hadn't seen the lives around me. But now I understood. There was a mission ahead of me, a mission I could not ignore. Jesus smiled, his expression filled with love. "You will not go back the same," he assured me. "This place, this peace, this love, it will stay with you, and you will carry it to those who need it most." I wanted to stay, to remain in this perfect place where there was no fear, no pain, and no doubt. But I knew, deep within my heart, that the love and peace I felt here wasn't meant to stay hidden. It was meant to be shared, to be spread to those who were still suffering, still lost in the darkness of the world. And though I didn't yet know how, I knew that I was being called back for a reason. "You will be ready," Jesus said, sensing the uncertainty in my heart. "When the time comes, you will know what to do. Trust in me and trust in the love you've received here." As he spoke, I felt a surge of strength and hope rise within me. It wasn't a feeling I had ever experienced on earth. This overwhelming certainty that no matter what lay ahead, I would be able to face it. I didn't know exactly how, but I knew I would have everything I needed. Jesus stood, offering me his hand. "Come, there is more to see," he said. But as I stood with him, I realized that the most important thing he had shown me wasn't just the beauty of heaven, the streets of gold, or the angels singing. It was the purpose I had been given, the reason I had been allowed to glimpse this place at all. Heaven wasn't just a destination, it was a calling. And I had been given a second chance to live out that calling. I wasn't finished yet, and as I took his hand, I knew that I was ready to return. As Jesus and I continued walking through the serene, awe-inspiring landscape of heaven, something shifted within me. It wasn't just the beauty around me that made my heart swell with emotion. It was the overwhelming sense of love and purpose that seemed to pulse from every corner of this divine realm. I had witnessed so much already. The fields of vibrant flowers that sang with joy, the shimmering structures that reached toward the sky, the people bathed in peace and light. But now, I felt a deeper understanding stirring within me. The journey wasn't over yet. The moment was coming when I would have to leave this place, and it filled me with a strange mixture of awe and apprehension. I could feel the change in the air. The gentle hum of heavenly music seemed to grow quieter, and the golden light that bathed everything began to shift, as though the very fabric of this world was preparing to show me something new, something deeper. I had been shown heaven's beauty, its perfection, its serenity, and the love of God that enveloped it all. But there was something more, something I needed to understand if I were to carry this experience with me back to the earth. Jesus led me to the edge of a vast, tranquil lake that shimmered like liquid crystal. The water stretched infinitely in every direction, perfectly still and clear, reflecting the blue skies above and the soft light that bathed the land. The surface was so smooth, it looked like a mirror. As I stood at the edge, I saw my reflection, but it was not the reflection of the woman I had been on earth. No, this was something entirely different. My reflection was radiant, glowing with the same light that seemed to pour from every corner of heaven. I looked at myself and realized I wasn't just seeing my physical form. I was seeing my soul, pure, untarnished, and full of peace. In that moment, I understood something profound. Heaven didn't just transform the external, it transformed the very essence of who I was. In this place, there was no pain, no shame, no guilt. There was only the light of God, a light that washed over every part of me, making me whole in ways I had never imagined. Jesus stepped beside me, his presence warm and comforting. "Emily," he said, his voice soft and steady, "what you see in this reflection is not just who you are in this moment. It is who you are meant to be. This is your true self, untainted by the struggles, the doubts, and the burdens of your earthly life." I felt a deep stirring in my heart as he spoke. I had struggled with so much on earth. I had lived with insecurities, fears, and a sense of never quite being enough. But here, in this place, I felt complete. I felt whole. I felt as though I had been created for this very moment, to stand in this reflection of purity and truth. And yet, I knew this wasn't the end. This wasn't just a fleeting experience. It was a revelation. I had seen the truth of who I was meant to be, and it was time to share that truth with others. Jesus looked at me with knowing eyes. "This is the essence of who you are. This is what God sees when he looks at you, his beloved child. But you cannot stay here forever. You have a purpose, a mission. You must return to share the love and light you've received." I felt a pang of reluctance deep within me. How could I leave this place of peace and perfection? How could I return to the world I had left behind, a world filled with confusion, pain, and uncertainty? My heart ached at the thought. But Jesus, sensing my hesitation, placed his hand on my shoulder with such gentleness that it soothed my fears. "You are not alone, Emily. You will never be alone. The love you have experienced here, the peace, will always be with you. And as you return to the world, you will carry that light with you, helping others find their way." I closed my eyes for a moment, feeling his words settle deep into my soul. It wasn't about me. It was about what I had been given, the love, the peace, the purpose, and how I was meant to share it with others. I had been given a glimpse of heaven not for my own benefit alone, but for the sake of those still lost in the darkness, those who were struggling to find their way. Jesus turned to face me fully, his eyes filled with love and compassion. "You may not understand it all right now, but your journey on earth isn't over. You've been given a second chance to fulfill the calling God has placed on your life. The world is broken, and it needs healing. And you, Emily, are one of the instruments that can help bring that healing. Not because you are perfect, but because you have experienced God's love and grace. You are a vessel for that love, and through you, others will see the light." I felt a surge of emotion as he spoke. It was as though every fear, every doubt I had carried in my earthly life began to dissipate in the face of his words. I could feel a deep sense of purpose stirring within me, a desire to live out the calling he had placed before me. I wasn't perfect, but I didn't need to be. I simply needed to trust in the love I had received and carry it with me wherever I went. Jesus gave me a soft smile, as though he could see the transformation taking place within me. "You are ready, Emily," he said. "You have seen the truth of who you are, and you know what you are meant to do. It is time for you to return, to share the light with the world." I nodded slowly, feeling both a sense of peace and a spark of excitement rise within me. I understood now. Heaven was not just a place to escape to, it was a place to be renewed, to be made whole, and then to go back out into the world to make a difference. I wasn't being called to stay in this perfect place. I was being called to bring a piece of this perfection to the broken world I had left behind. As I turned to face him one last time, Jesus looked at me with such tenderness that it brought tears to my eyes. "Remember, Emily," he said softly, "I am with you always. In every moment, in every challenge, you are not alone. The love you have received here will never leave you. It will guide you, and it will sustain you." And then, with a deep breath, I felt the shift. The world around me began to fade as I felt my earthly body calling me back. It wasn't a painful transition. It wasn't even a sudden jolt. It was like stepping from one room into another, from one reality into another. But even as I left this place of peace, I knew with certainty that I was not leaving it behind. The love, the light, the peace, it was all coming with me. The moment I opened my eyes again, I was back. I was in my body, lying still in a hospital bed. The sterile scent of the room, the soft beeping of machines, the hum of activity in the distance, it all felt so distant, so surreal. It took me a moment to realize that I had returned to Earth, that I was still alive, but something had changed within me. I had seen the truth of who I was, the truth of God's love, and I was no longer the same. The light of heaven still burned within me, and I knew that I had been given a mission, a purpose. I wasn't going to waste this second chance. I wasn't going to hide from the world. I was going to share the love, the peace, and the truth I had encountered. The world needed it, and I, now more than ever, was ready to share it. Jesus' words echoed in my heart, "You are my hands and feet on earth." I understood now. I had a calling to fulfill, a life to live, and with the love of heaven in my heart, I was ready to face whatever came next.